Hello and welcome to a Talmud Israeli production. Today we'll review the highlights of this week's course of Daf Yomi study, Masechet Bava Batra, pages 68 through 74. Samachet 68. Tanya, Hamocher Ta'ir. If you sell a city, now in the old days there were whole cities that were owned by private individuals and they could be changed hands from one person to another in the course of a sale. But the question is, what was included in a city, an ir? So, hamocher et lo machar benoteha. If you sell a city, you have not sold the suburbs, the banot, the daughters, the suburbs. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, hamocher et machar benoteha. Whereas Rashbag says, if you sell a city, you have sold the suburbs. Now, it's interesting to think about this. From the perspective of a city dweller, it's very easy to think that outlying suburbs are not part of your town. That you're the urbanite, the cosmopolitan, and that the people who live in the suburbs are almost like in the boondocks, and they're not part of your town. So you may view them separately, and a sale of a city would not include suburbia. However, if you're from rural, distant parts of the country, and you hear that someone lives in a suburb, that's practically the big city. So I'm from New York, I'm from Long Island. As a Long Islander, I grew up in a suburb. For me, or for a city dweller, I'm not a city dweller. I'm a suburbanite. But for someone who grew up in the middle of America, in Oklahoma or Kansas, they'd say, the guy came from New York. So that's different perspectives on the banot, on the suburbs relative to the city. Samachtet, 69. Boy Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Zera asked the following question. Malbanot shalchanot mahu. What's the status of window frames? If a house is sold, do the window frames get included in the sale? Do we say that they are pegged to the window just for the sake of beautification? Or do we say no, once they are attached, they become like mechubar lakarka, fixed in place, fixed into the ground, and they are sold together with the remainder of the house? And the answer is teku. We leave it unresolved. Ein 70. Tanya, Shtar Kisiyot. What happens if an investment document is produced by someone against orphans who were heirs to an estate? And the person with the document says, I was a business partner of your father, your deceased father, and I want to take out my share of the investment. So what happens now? The judges of the diaspora, they say this guy swears an oath that he wasn't previously paid for his share of the investment, and he gets to recover the entirety of what he claimed to be owed, what appears in the document. Whereas the judges of the land of Israel take a different perspective. They say, yes, he has to swear, but he's only going to collect half and not the entire sum. Ayin Aleph, 71. If a person sells a house, they have not sold certain aspects of the property. Lo tabor v'lo tagat, lo tashovach. They have not sold the water cistern on the property, nor the olive press, nor the dovecote. And this is true ben charuvin ben yeshuvin, whether or not the items in question are active or inactive. Meaning, even if there are no dovecotes and no olives being pressed, no doves in the dovecote and no olives being pressed in the olive press, because the item has has gone into desuetude, it's not being used. Still, it could be brought back to functioning, and therefore is a separate entity, a financially valuable entity, and is not part of the sale of the house. Ein bet 72. Omer sheyesh bo sa'atayim. If you have a stack of grain which has included within it a large amount of grain, 2 sa'ahs worth of grain, shechacho eno shechacha. If it is forgotten out in the field, it does not have the status of shechacha. Now remember, there are 3 classic emoluments for the poor: leket, shechacha, and peah. Leket is the dropped stalks. Shechacha referred to the forgotten sheaves, and peah the corner of the field. Well, there are limits on the amount of stuff, of grain, that can be collected if it's forgotten. And the 2 sa'ah rule is that if you have a sheaf out there in the field which is that size, that's not considered a forgotten sheaf. That's a tremendous amount, and the poor have no right to it. The owner can go back and bring it in into his domain. Ein Gimel, 73. Tanarabana. Hamocher tasfina. If you sell a boat, well, what's included in the sale of the boat? Machar eta iskala. You've also sold the gangplank. But bor hamayim and the fresh water cistern. Remember that when people would go out to sea in a saltwater environment, they had to have a supply of fresh water for drinking purposes and bathing purposes to be used for the long stretch that they were out. And so every ship had a bor mayim, a cistern to preserve fresh water. That's included in the sale. Rabbi Natan Rabbi Natan adds that if you sell the boat, you also are selling the little boats which are used to ferry the passengers back and forth from the shore to the main ship in a situation where there's no deep water dock. And you have to anchor the big ship out at sea some distance and ferry the people in little boats back and forth to the shoreline. Ayin Daled. Famous passage in the name of Rabbi Bar Chana, who told many stories about his interactions with Hahutaya, a certain Arab merchant. Well, what happened? Amali Hahutaya, the Arab merchant, said to him, I'll show you where the 250 men of Korach who were swallowed by the earth happen to be buried, where they are situated below the surface. So they saw that there were some cracks in the ground, and smoke was coming out of the cracks in the ground. So he took some shearings of wool and dipped it in water and stuck it into the ground. And guess what? When he pulled it out of the ground, it was singed from fire. So then the Arab says to Rabbi Bar Chana, you want to hear what they're saying? Let's find out what they're saying. And what were they saying? Moshe emet v'torato emet badaim. That Moses and his Torah are true, and they, meaning we, the 250 men who were swallowed, are liars, are falsifiers. Amarli kol tlatin yomim mahadalu ganim lahacha. So the Arab said, listen, every 30 days, Gehenna, the depths of hell, spit up these people and bring them over here in order for them to be able to say their little story of Moshe Misv'Torah, that Moshe and his Torah are true and we are liars, and they're like basa bekalachat, they're like a meat which is being stirred in a cauldron, that they're being moved around from the depths of the Gehenna to this spot where the Pe'aretz, the mouth of the earth, opened up and swallowed them, and mainly to just to be able to say that we were falsifiers and Moshe and his Torah are true. Everyone have a great week.